Welcome! Imagine a classroom buzzing with energy where every student is engaged and eager to learn physics. Well, that wasn't my reality. Despite my best efforts, I found myself stuck in a traditional teaching model, delivering lectures while some of my students fell behind. And it was frustrating to see their motivation fade. And I realized I lacked the time and resources to support their individual needs. And then everything changed. I developed a transformative approach using OneNote that revolutionized how my students learned and how I taught. Today, I'll tell you what I did. Throughout my teaching career, I've guided over 1,000 students. A powerful moment came when a former student honored me as her best teacher. That was heartwarming. And this inspired me to participate in the co-creation of the Empower Future Learning program and share my transformative teaching approaches with educators, reminding me that education's true power lies in its ability to inspire. In my traditional setup, physics felt like a one-way street. I stood at the front, explaining concepts, conducting experiments, solving exercises, but I always felt something was fundamentally broken in this setup. Despite my engagement efforts, some students disconnected, couldn't keep up, or lost interest. Perhaps you remember your own physics teacher or your own science classes at school back then. I was working harder than ever, but achieving less. First, I digitized all my teaching materials into OneNote, creating a structured and accessible learning environment. This allowed students to see their progression clearly and work at their own pace. It was like having 20 versions of myself in the classroom, helping each student on their unique learning journey. I designed chapter structures that made it easier for students to navigate through the material. And the clarity helped them to stay on track and feel a sense of accomplishment as they progressed. Let me actually share my screen to show you how it looked like. So today I just show the overview of how the content library looks like in OneNote for those of you who are familiar with the classroom OneNote setup. I had my chapters on the left side for 2 years of physics, and each chapter was structured in a similar way. So I always had chapter overview, it's in German, but the language isn't that important at the moment. It's more like the look at it. And the important point was that the assessments were color-coded. Everything that was green, my students knew they could do on their own pace. That meant I didn't have to give them the permission or the guidance. You have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do that. They knew what to do. And then it was structured around different activities. Who am I, them, how we group the teams. There will be an extra video for that. What are we reading? Where do we put notes inside? And the different tasks according to the different subtopics of a chapter. And it was symbols. It was easier for me to guide them. They actually saw, okay, here's actually something I can watch, and here's something I can write. And back there are the solutions. So they always had the possibility to check whether my solution is right just after they solved it. They didn't have it for a week, because then the interest goes down and they lose this curiosity whether they had it right or not. So every aspect was covered, and so I went through all of the different chapters. There will be an own classroom training on OneNote, how to set it up. So in January, keep that in mind. Okay, back to my journey. Actually, this group work became a cornerstone, empowering students to help each other, so they weren't as dependent on me as before. This ensured no one was left behind and fostered a collaborative learning environment. Actually inspired by the book Teach That Homework that I read during fall break on the beach, I developed the skill match method, and this approach boosted motivation by allowing students to bring in their strength rather than just complete homework or complete tasks. I will have a link in the description showing how you set it up in an actual classroom. But what about delivering new input? When students are learning on their own pace, how can you ensure everyone receives the information they need without being tied to a single timeline? That was the second change. To ensure everyone received the necessary information without being tied, I created my own videos. And the boost came when I started to use the platform EdPuzzle, because there I could make interactive video lessons by adding questions, comments, additional resources directly into the videos. And this allowed students to get immediate feedback and engage actively with the material. Nobody could sit behind and let the others do the work. You know the feeling, like you ask a question and there are 3 hands that rise, and it's always the same 3 people, and there are some people who are just comfortable waiting out till the other ones give the answers. That wasn't the case anymore. Everybody went through the new material by themselves. So everybody went through the material more or less one-on-one with me. I can show you a video how it actually looked like in the platform. And there will be, if you're interested in how to set up such a video, there will be a video training in February. Write in the comments if that's what you would like to see in February, and then I make something for that. So here we have...
Weiter beinhaltet der Stromkreis ein Rad und einen Hahn. Die Druckdifferenz ist der Antrieb für den Volumenstrom.
Blah, blah, blah. And then a question arises where people can check whether it's the right question, whether they understood it right way or not. So they get an immediate feedback. And they can also rewatch something if they thought like, well, it's not exactly...
Zu jedem Element im Wasserstromkreis gibt es ein Element im hohen.
And then it's the next question. So here it's a note, because it was important for me to make sure they wouldn't just watch through the video. You know the feeling when you feel like you understand it, but you actually first realize if you do when you are actively engaging. Active engagement by asking questions, by answering questions, by writing something down, or just to pause and make sure, what did I listen to right now? So yes, that was quite a big step for me, but let's move on. So I want to be honest. Every change comes with its challenges itself. It's often easier to stick with what we know, even if it's not entirely satisfying. Were the students excited about the change from the start? Not all of them. Taking more responsibility for their own progress also means there's no one else to blame if they don't achieve the grades they expect. So the transition took some time. But was it worth it? Absolutely. The benefits far outweighed the initial friction, and the end result was well worth the effort for both sides, actually. So students began taking ownership of their learning, reviewing materials, and sometimes even preparing ahead of time. So comments like, May I watch the video from the last lesson again before I proceed? Or I've already watched the video because I knew I would be absent last week, showed that students were engaged and proactive. That definitely never happened before. The most significant step in this transformation was the hardest. And it wasn't about the tools. It was about shifting from being an information provider to a learning guide. And by adopting the growth mindset, I recognized my role was not just to deliver information, but support and guide students as they navigated their unique learning journeys. This shift fostered a culture of continuous learning and growth for both my students and me. It sounds simple, but it definitely was not easy. I often found myself thinking, what if they don't work? I need to control them more to make sure they're really doing something. At the beginning, I had to concentrate hard to avoid falling into this tone of, I caught you doing something else. Instead, I tried to approach them with curiosity and asked, I see you're working on something else right now. Can I help you get back on track? And it paid off. My relationship with the students became much closer because they realized that I genuinely cared about supporting their learning. The transformation was remarkable. I actually remember one class where it started to get boring for me. Everybody I asked told me, I'm on track, I don't need help. Gorgeous. So the journey taught me that the true power of education lies in its ability to inspire. And by embracing technology, structured learning path, and a growth mindset, I transformed my classroom into a place where every student felt empowered to succeed. If you're curious about how you can apply these strategies in your own classroom, I'll invite you to the next session. Remember, every small step towards innovation can lead to significant changes in how you and your students learn and grow. So I'm wondering actually whether you could take something from this short inspiration. So what was your key insight today? Write down in the comments and write down your questions. What do you want to see? Then I can plan out the next session. Thanks for joining me on this journey, and I look forward to hearing about your own transformative experiences. Have a nice day.